Hello Admirals and welcome back to my channel where I talk to you about Battlefleet Gothic, the space fleet game based in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Uh, there are a number of different fleet lists for all the different factions and things like that. And within those there are different sort of eccentricities that occur within them. There's some unusual rules that occur. And Orcs have some fun different rule sets and there's some different fleet lists. And one of those is Ork Klanz. So what that list kind of lets you do is put on your ships some different rules for the different Ork clans that are represented within the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Things like the Bad Moons and the Snake Bites and the Evil Suns, and depending on if you put them on your ships or not, gives them some extra flavour. So in this video I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about those and some of the extra fun upgrades that they give, as well as the fun extra little rule sets they come with that as well, where you can get extra gubbins. Less gubbins. It's a real thing. So I'm just going to talk you through that, very similar to the Inquisition side of things, give you a bit of an understanding and some ideas towards sort of that Ork Clans list. I really love playing it. I think it's really adds some real fun flavour and narrative fun to the Ork list, as well as giving them some extra bits and bobs, or gubbins. So yeah, let's check it out. Okay, Admirals, this is kind of my portion of my Bad Moons fleet that I kind of use in the Ork Clans list, but they kind of get moved around and things like that. And my other Ork ships have different colors to denote sort of the different potential clans. But essentially what happens is for every 500 points of ships that you have in your fleet list, you can take one Ork Warlord. And for every one Ork Warlord that you take, you can designate them one of the numerous different clans. So in the Ork clans, you have the traditional big clans that are well known in 40k. That's the Goths, the Evil Suns, Bad Moons, Death Skulls, Blood Axes, and Snake Bites. So if typically a lot of games are about 1500 points, you can have 3 warlords in that. And that means that you can have 3 different clans represented as part of that fleet list. Therefore, depending on which clans you want to go through, it kind of comes down to what kind of how you want to play your style, basically, and things like that. So the different clans, you pay a points cost depending on that clan, and that provides you a clan upgrade to that particular squadron or ship that you're putting that on. So, for example, if I want to put a warlord on my whaling ship here, I put the warlord on, and then I can pay the extra points for that. If I want to put the extra points, I can put it on them as well and pay an individual for that as well. So you can put it on multiple ships. It's just depends on how many warlords you got and how many clans you want to put in. Essentially, you don't have to, but you can. So if I, for example, have a 1500 point, you can put 3, but you may choose only to do, 2, for example, or just the 1, as an example. But depending on which ones you want, it really does come down to your play style. So each different clan has different bonuses attached to it. So for example, the Goths, they're pretty aggressive Orcs in the lore. They like to get up close and personal. They don't like shooters. They are very much towards getting in and boarding more. So for example, their bonuses are +1 to the dice roll during boarding actions, and they get a +1 to the leadership when they try and ram other ships. So if you're up for trying to get in close and you're really building your fleet list towards really getting up close and personal, boarding, maybe even ramming with ram ships, a Goth's extra leadership on ram ships, for example, can really come in handy. And then there are others as well. So you have the Evil Suns. They're all about the speed freaks. They love quick things, basically. Red makes everything go faster, right? So if you have Evil Suns Warlord with then the clan markings, then they give you an extra 5 centimeters in speed. So if you are playing maybe what's the scenario where you need extra speed? Maybe one of the transport ones where you're trying to capture a transport, or blockade run, for example. You're trying to get across the board, or trying to catch transports with cargo one. Having that extra 5 centimeters on an Orc ship can really get you across the board. It doesn't seem like much, but it could make the difference between getting in within distance to fire weapons or to board, for example. So I'm always a big fan of extra speed on any ships because speed and movability is king in any tabletop game. So that extra 5 centimeters, especially on orc ships, which are typically pretty slow, could actually make or break and be a big difference. Then you got the bad moons. Obviously, these are the bad moons, right? They are the richest of orcs because they love their teeth. They got big teeth. And you know, they can afford all the glitzy gits and shiny gubbins and things like that. But what that means is that when they do this, they get Mad Gunners as an upgrade. And Mad Gunners is a really Manic Gunners, not Mad Gunners. They're the same thing, right? But what that allows you to do is re-roll dice for the firepower of their guns. So orcs ships typically random. They have some dice that are set in, but then something like their heavy guns is something like 4 heavy guns plus D3 or D6 or something like that. That allows you to re-roll that roll if you get a 1, for example. So it could really mean the difference between a good roll, bad roll, and could give you loads of weapons batteries or guns, or it might not. So really useful upgrade if you're going shooty and you want to start sort of blasting away your opponents. Yeah, the bad moons are a good example, and that's 30 points. The other two were 20. That one's 30, and the death skulls are the next, and they are also 30 points. They are the masters of salvage. They're really good at salvaging and love the good scrap that they get at the end. And that gives them looted upgrades. So torpedoes and lances for no additional cost. So that's one of the probably I think the strongest ones to give orcs extra torpedoes or lances, which they typically don't have access to lances. Could be a really good thing, especially if you're maybe going up against Space Marines or Necrons where they've got heavy armor and you really need to use those lances to break through that sort of heavy armor. Not so much though against the Eldar and Dark Eldar hollow fields. So you may want to consider that when you're producing your clans is the word fleet list. Now the blood axes are a little different. So the blood axes are kind of disliked by all other orc clans, and the reason for that is they're seen as sort of sneaky, and they deal with Imperials a bit too much for other orcs. Lightning, they're some of the orcs that you'll find in the lore that will actually talk to an Inquisitor, for example, or a rogue trader. They're not immediately going to jump. Well, they're not as likely to immediately jump to slashing them and shooting them, right? So in their bonus, their warlord on their ship can take a refit from the Imperial refit table, and that costs 20 points. So suddenly you could add potentially an Imperial weapon, something like maybe a targeting matrix, onto orc ships, which onto your warlord ship, which is pretty strong. And they can also, for every squadron of escorts that they have, which are called Tiddler squadrons, by the way, in this fleet Ork Klanz list, which I think is hilarious. If they have 6 or more, you can add in Imperial escorts into that list. So suddenly, if you've got 6 escorts of your thing, and Chaos as well, so you can include either Imperial or Chaos escorts into your fleet list. So suddenly, if you want some Cobras, or maybe an Idolator, maybe even a Sword or Firestorm, suddenly you can add it in with those blood axes. Yeah, that's pretty powerful, I think, because those ships can pack a wallop. And I would note that those ships are added in at the cost they are in those fleet lists. So for a Cobra, for example, you need to pay 30 points to put it in the list, for example, right? That sort of thing. And the final one is snake bites, and snake bites are a bit of a weird one, to be perfectly honest, because snake bites are they hate technology. And you'll only find them in Ork hulks and rocks. That's where you can have them. They can't be on these sorts of ships. They can only be on the Ork hulks and rocks because they distrust all technology. So when they're going through the warp, the only reason why they go on those ships in the first place is because it gets them to another scrap, another fight. But they distrust it. They don't like technology at all. So you can only put them on them, which is a bit of a shame. But at the same time, I think this one is their bonus is a +1 to their brace for impact command roll. So they do get an improved leadership roll essentially when you're bracing for impact, but I think that but only on the Ork Hulk and or rocks that you may have in your fleet. So I think that one's probably the least useful out of any of the clans, I personally think, but you may disagree. Let me know what you think on that one. But that's probably the least one. I think my favorite one is probably the Bad Moons with the Manic Gunners, and also the Evil Sons with the speed. But in certain scenarios, I do really like the addition of the Lances from Death Skulls, and I really do actually quite like the Blood Axes being able to add in extra little fun games. So depending on who you're playing and how you want to sort of make up your fleet, that's kind of how they're the main clan upgrades. Now there are additions to that, and one of those fun additions, I actually, one of my favorite ones is called the Young Guns, and these are young orcs. They still have the mushroom on their head or something like that. I don't know what just denotes a young orc. I'm not really sure, but what a young orc means that when you have these Tiddler squadrons of escorts, if you have if you have 5 or more in a squadron, and their leadership is 5 or 6, I think it's 5. No, or 6. It's 5 or 6. They actually get a bonus ship for free. So, for example, I've got a squadron of 6. I roll to see their leadership, and it's a 5. I can add another ship for free. That's pretty good. So that's a pretty cool thing for the Tiddler squadrons. That's pretty useful. You can mix and match as well. The escorts, they don't all need to be the same either. You can even put a warlord in the escort squadron if you want, which then negates that leadership as well, and you do that afterwards. So there's some fun tactical plays you potentially could do with that. Suddenly maybe going from a 4 or 5 ram ship sized squadron to 6 is a bit frightening, to be perfectly honest. And critically, you still need to remove all of the escorts to get those victory points for those additional clan points as well. So if you decide to put these as Bad Moons and you get all the extra ship because of the leadership, your opponent needs to wipe them all out to get that clan bonus points for victory points. So that's 30 points. So to get those additional 30 points, they need to wipe them all. So it is quite important to keep that in note. It gives you some tactical flexibility, I feel. And one last fun thing about the Ork Klanz list, which I think really does lend itself beautifully to flavor as well, is gubbins. Yes, I mentioned it at the beginning of the video. You can actually get gubbins. And orcs are always trying to improve their ships between battles, try and do whatever they can to get the scrap and buy new parts with their teeth and that sort of thing. And sometimes that means that they can add gubbins to the thing. And this is an addition to the clans. So you can have a warlord, and then you add on the points for the number of ships you want to have the clan upgrades to. So maybe these two ships have the Bad Moons. Maybe this one has Evil Sons, for example, with the warlord on it. And then you can buy gubbins. And what is gubbins? Well, they're upgrades. Okay, so you can get a numerous number of different ones. You can get super boosters, which gives you another 5 centimeter boost to your speed and 4d6 for your all ahead full. You get extra power fields, which is additional shield. Critical with that is it can't be put on escorts for that one, which is pretty good. You can get extra turrets, which gives you 2 extra turrets on a ship. That can't be taken with Maniac turrets, though, which also gives extra turrets. That gives D3 turrets on that one. You can get looted lances, which gives you 2 lance batteries. You can get looted torpedoes, which allows you to re-roll the strength of your torpedo waves. You get mad mechs, which are hilarious. They can re-roll dice for critical damage. So if you have a critical damage, like your port armor damage or fire, they can re-roll that to see if you can get that repaired, which is pretty cool. Manic gunners, which we mentioned before, which get you re-roll those guns. If you know your strength of those guns, if you wish. You have mega armored boarding party knobs, which are hilarious, and they give you an additional 1+ for boarding actions and hit and run as well, which is quite important, I think. And you can get power ram. So if you're really keen on ramming, you can get a power ram, which gives you a +1 rolling leadership. So what's critical about these is they all cost points, and they all vary from between like 10 points to 30 points, give or take, averaging out between 15 to 25, right? And you can put them on any of the ships, apart from when, you know, additional shield for escorts and things like that. But they're in addition to those clan rules. So you could have Evil Sons with the 5 centimeter speed, and then pay for super boosters to get another 5 centimeters if you want. So that will up the price of your, you know, ship by about 45 points. But if your need for speed, then you potentially could do that. Maybe you want to have more lances, so you could add more additional lances, looted lances, onto a ship in addition to the Ork Clans. What's the Ork Clan one that does that? Death Skulls, I think, does that. So it gives you an opportunity to tailor. Now, yes, that typically means that your ships will start to become more expensive. And typically with an Ork fleet, you're going to have the most amount of ships on the board. So as you add these in, that probably reduces down the number of ships you may have on the board. But those additional extras could be really, really useful. So personally, I really like the thought of extra shields. I really like the extra speed. That's one of my favorite things, I think, for orcs. If you can add, they've got good firepower, and they can put out quite a significant amount of ordnance if you tailor your ships correctly. They can put out a lot of bombers and fighters, and they can put like torpedo bombers, and they can put a lot of torpedoes actually out there, up to almost the level of Tau level. So, but you can also tailor your fleet to be more boarding heavy if you wish, depending on who you're up against. And so suddenly, maybe adding some speed onto your ships with Evil Sons, and then additional boosters can boost your ship across the board. Or maybe you go, I'm going to give them Goths and give them the extra hit and run ability, leadership, and extra, you know, improvement on my boarding, and then give them the super boosters to speed across the board. And you get 4d6 then on your speed rather than the 2d6 they typically get with all the head full, which you auto pass. Remember, orcs auto pass; they're all head full orders. So what I think admirals, you need to be kind of aware of with these is you can add things into these to really up your play style and how you want to play the game. So you really need to take into consideration those extra gubbins to add into and work with your clan. You're deciding on your clans. So really fun to play around with. It's there's no, you know, meta. I don't talk about meta things, but it's certainly the extra speed, the extra shields, and potentially the extra bonuses to boarding and things like that are things that you should consider as part of looking at the Ork Clans list. Okay, Admirals, that is the Ork Clans. They are hilarious. They can add in a lot of fun things. There are cool combinations that you can really play around with to get to, realistically, the style of play you want to play your orcs in reality. So I really like the list. A lot of people are kind of a bit confused by it sometimes, or a bit not happy about it, but I personally think it really adds flavor to the orcs, and you can really kind of tailor your play style in many ways. If you want to go faster, you can. If you want to hit harder, you can. If you want to board more, you can. And you can kind of mix them a little bit to do multiple things, and can really surprise other fleets. Suddenly you may have lances on those ships that can do damage to those space marines, or suddenly you are 10 centimeters quicker than what was expected, and you are available to catch that sneaky little Eldar that's hiding behind those asteroids. So really worth giving them a go. There's only probably a couple that I'm kind of like, oh, not so sure about that one. Snakebite Clan being one, because of the limitation on the Hulk and Rock, but could be fun with a full Hulk and Orc fleet list, right? Where you just play those, which is more than fine in the Orcs list, right? So, and then maybe adding on things onto the Orc rocks could be fun, right? So there are some weird little fun sort of gimmicks you could play around with that. And yeah, so let me know in the comments what you think about the Ork Klanz list and what are some of the combinations you've played with or would like to consider. This video is going out this week, and then I'm off on holiday for a little bit, so I'm not going to do any videos for maybe a couple of weeks. But then I'll be back with a tournament kind of discussion with some more competitive fleet lists coming, and then maybe a bit of a chat about the scenarios from Adepticon as well, which would be awesome. Maybe then a chat also about one of the tournaments that's occurring here in Australia down in Canberra. So hopefully I can do a little bit of a talk about those lists that people are using in more competitive environment, not just fun lists like I like to do. So I'll see you soon, Admirals. I hope that was really useful for you all, and yeah, catch you again soon.